Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Tara Time. Tara Time is the weekly live show and now podcast where I bring wonderful guests on every week to talk about all things leadership, all things business, and all things Tara. This week I have another incredible guest. Now, this is my first guest from this side of the world where I'm living at the moment in Argentina. And we made super fast friends, and she is an incredible woman in leadership too. So I thought, what better place to bring her on and to have a talk about what she's doing right now and a little bit about how we met and all that kind of good stuff. So I'm going to let her introduce herself, but I'm super excited to welcome Kate Tyler. Hello, Kate, introduce yourself.
Hi, Tara. How are you?
Wonderful.
Good. No, thanks for having me. Kate Tyler. So I'm living in Argentina. I've been living in Buenos Aires with my husband for 2 years. We moved down here actually for my job. So I work for Shell and I'm supporting actually our business down here. I'm head of strategy actually down here. And it's been an awesome journey, like jumping into expat life. Anyways, that's me. I'm sure we'll get into like
We will.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to dig into your career because I want to talk about that a lot. But I thought we would start, and I just said this at the beginning, and I think actually I've not even heard this phrase until you said this phrase to me, but about fast friends. So I always like to introduce how I met my guests, how I know my guests, things like that, and I think we have a wonderful story. So we first met, and this is really interesting because I am averse to being in any WhatsApp group of any kind, and that is Tom's role only forever. And that's how it started. So I think Tom had joined one of the nomad or the expat groups in Buenos Aires, and there was a whole thing selling rugby tickets. Tom had bought too many rugby tickets and he was selling, and Kate had reached out saying, "Oh, I'm looking for some rugby tickets," and so that transpired in there. So Kate, very, very kind, were like, "Oh, before we go to the rugby, let's meet, come to our apartment," which gave me the immediate social anxiety of, "Oh my God, I've got to go meet strangers," which is awful. And I nearly didn't go. So Tom and I had walked all the way up to the apartment, and I got about 5 minutes away and I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to meet the strangers. I don't want to go. I'm not coming. I'm not playing. And when I get like that and I dig my heels in, I often just don't do the thing. But Tom was like, whatever, it's up to you. I'm going. Seem like really nice people. You can walk the 40 minutes back on your own if you like, but I'm going. So I was like, let's go. And we just walked into these two strangers' house.
Yes.
And that was when? September last year,
I think so. But like the funny thing is like when we've unpacked that whole story is the fact that like I also am not active in those WhatsApp groups. Like we were trying to get rugby tickets because we had other friends who were trying to get rugby tickets. And so I was just like, maybe I can ask in this WhatsApp group and find some because I had no idea how to do it. And Tom was like, yeah, we have them. And actually the first time that like when Tom like said it, and then we started chatting like on the privately, I thought that he was just gonna sell me 2 tickets, like, and we were just gonna go. And then when I like found out that it was like, we have 4, I was like, we had the same sort of moment of just like, oh gosh, like now we have to hang out with strangers. But we were like, well, what do we do? And so anyways, it ended up being awesome. And I love actually the story of you being like, I'm not going. Like, and especially now that I know you too. It's so accurate. I'm glad that you decided to show up though. And I'm glad that you decided to embrace it.
Yeah, and that's I actually have to be very thankful because that is Tom all over. Like, if that was me selling the tickets, it would have been like, "Here's the tickets, bye bye." But he just got to Buenos Aires, and Tom needs friends. I'm quite a solitary person. I could just hide away on my own. Well, and it's not good. If I was left to my own devices, that's what I would do. So I'm so glad I have Tom because I do need friends, and I like once I'm in there, it's great. But like he was like, let's just actively go and meet some strangers. I was like, what if they don't want to do that? What would like, oh, it's so awkward and horrible, but he just doesn't have that. He's like, let's do it. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's going to be a few hours of our life or whatever.
Totally. And then we hung out all night.
Hung out all night. And then every week since, I think.
Yeah.
When I was trying to write something on here. I was trying to write the post about this episode. And I wanted to write something really clever, like using numbers. I was thinking like, I think, like, I was first thinking, how many times had we even met before we decided to move into your house? One, not that many in real terms. Or, but then Tom was like, yeah, but then there's the fact that we literally have seen them, I think, every single weekend
Yeah,
since that, or nearly every single weekend since that situation.
totally.
And we were just going through all of those things. And the term fast friends, and when I wrote this, I wrote fast friends, and quite a few people commented actually, they like really resonated with, oh yeah, when you're abroad, when
Yeah,
you're living as an expat, um, suddenly your friends become your family because your family aren't there.
yeah,
And so friendships are not only really deep, and they are deep because they need to be, and you need those people, but they're also, they happen really fast and they get really deep really fast. I don't know if you found that as well, like being an expat. And
yes. I mean, for sure. I mean, I will say though, because I like grew up, well, one, because I'm an only child, but then two, because I grew up constantly moving, I
Mhm.
actually find that like fast friends actually come like pretty naturally to me in my life just because I've like had to like pick up and move.
Yeah.
I think Kurt for sure, it's definitely different. And he actually, it's so funny because like in the US, like where we're from, like he actually, when we were both going to the office, Kurt was like more like introverted at home and in our social life. And since he's like now working from the office, working from home here, he's
Mhm.
like way more social and I'm like, oh. So it's also been interesting because Kurt actually has been sort of the social, I would say, like, I don't know, raft of our lives here. And I definitely think, yeah, there's people here that like, well, you and Tom obviously like who have become like our family and we will be
Yeah.
friends for life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've only known each other like 6 months. And I remember
I,
when I
so weird. When I wrote that, I was thinking about that. I was like, we've actually only known each other for 6 months.
yeah, exactly. So it's
Yeah,
funny.
but we've also, like, okay, that includes including family traditions like Pie Sunday, Sunday dinners together that we need to
Yeah.
do.
Well,
That is
it started with Sunday roast. Well, it started with Thanksgiving that bridged into Sunday roast
yeah,
and in the dead of summer here.
yeah,
And then it moved into Pie Sunday, yes.
yeah. But they're the types of things, and that's what, like, they're where the family traditions and the friend
Totally.
traditions merge, and that's what I love about traveling. And you're right, moving, if you've moved around your whole life, it's the same situation. But one, learning about how other people do things, or learning about other people's, like I say, family life or family culture is often brought into those friendships. And I think that's why,
Yeah,
that's part of, like I say, why they get so deep so fast. But
totally.
also for us, like when we're moving around as well, like and
Yeah.
maybe not so much moving around after we've been, I don't know, is the word corralled or bribed? I'm trying to think of the right word for, we are now coming back to Buenos Aires and I'm blaming you. It's your fault.
It was a long ploy. I got it.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah. But still, like that whole, when you're moving around, it does happen fast. And um it's like these friendships, even though, like I say, we've known each other for 6 months, if I look
Yeah.
at some of my friends that I've had for years and years, like the friendship level is the same irrespective of the time. And
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is that makes that, or makes it happen. And I think, as somebody who, if you're somebody who doesn't travel around, or hasn't lived that life, it's almost a bit weird. It's a bit
Yeah,
weird to look into.
totally. Yeah, totally. It's actually interesting here because Argentina, like Argentines have such a strong family culture too. And so it's funny because like I feel like actually Argentines every Sunday they go and they spend time with their family. And so like in the expat world, it's like every Sunday we're hanging out with friends and it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah. So actually share a little, because I think it's interesting. Share a little bit about you moving around, like growing up, because I loved hearing about
Sure.
that, and where you've lived and all of that kind of stuff.
Sure. Um, no, so both of my parents were like in the army or they were raised by army families. So they also grew up a lot moving around. Both of my parents actually are national park rangers. So my mom actually like studied English and my dad was a psychology major. And then they were both like, we're going to go work in nature. And so they actually met each other in the national parks in the United States. And then basically like in government in the US, you have to in order to progress or grow your career, you have to move around and you have to be mobile. So we moved all over the place. So I was born in Colorado. I lived in California. I lived in New Mexico. I lived in Texas once. We then moved to South Florida in Miami for my high school years. And then I went to college in South Carolina, which was an interesting experience. Then I went to Georgia for a year for a master's degree, which is where I met Kurt, and then we moved to Houston after that. And then we lived in Houston for 12 years, and that was the longest I ever lived anywhere.
Wow.
But yeah.
What did you enjoy moving around when you were younger?
No.
Like, did you enjoy it or did you hate it? Why did you hate it?
Probably like it's back to the roots of like people want to feel like connected to something. And so every time that like we picked up and moved, also because I think because I'm an only child, I also felt that it was like my parents are picking up my whole life and I don't have any friends anymore. And then we're moving. And so I didn't have a sibling to like commiserate with. You know what I mean? Like be like, I hate you, mom and dad. But like, so I always felt like so frustrated that my parents were like picking us up and moving. But I will say now, like looking back, I have like an itch to move or do something different. And I actually like that for sure, I think has played a part in my own drive to just take more risks, be bolder, be more brave, like in my own personal or professional career, but also like just to, I don't know, just to go for it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, so now I look back and I love it. So yeah.
Well, you've done it as an adult. So yeah, do you know what I mean? Like I was thinking about how that influences you to then go do it, like you say, as after being 12 years in the same place, going, actually, now it's time to move again. And now it's time to take risk and go somewhere else and go somewhere new. So talk us through like the move to Argentina and how that came about in your career and, you know, like how you made that decision.
Well, I think, so it's actually really interesting. I mean, growing up in the national parks and then deciding to go and work in energy or oil, like, you know, for a traditional oil and gas company, a lot of people are always like, this doesn't resonate. And it's like, for sure, people think that I'm like a fish out of water in this company, but I actually find like so much purpose in this company because I would rather be in the company changing it from within than sort of vilifying it. And I think, anyways, the energy industry, you and I have talked about this before. It's like way more complicated than black and white. But the other part of this is that like the thing I actually really have loved about Shell and working for that company is that like even though we were 12 years in Houston, my role in the company changed like every 2 to 3 years. So I felt like I was getting this big change kind of every 2 to 3 years, even though physically I wasn't moving. And then I knew that I wanted to experience cultures outside of the US. I'd lived my whole life in the US. I knew the culture. And I had actually been pitching internally within Shell for, I don't even know, at least 5 years to say like, I want to go abroad. I want to go abroad. I want to go abroad. And it was, I mean, it was until I actually had like really, really poor sponsorship and senior levels before I actually launched that. Like I didn't really recognize how much like, well, senior leaders and those who can actually have power can help your career, but then also advocating for that. Right. And truthfully, I think I hit the jackpot on expat locations that Shell is because like Buenos Aires is incredible. It's so beautiful here. It's really complicated to do business here, but it's lovely. So
you essentially just said you made it really clear. You made it, because people ask me this all of the time about how to move a career abroad, and it's a work that I do with a lot of my clients. And I always like the first thing I always say is, have you actually told anybody that this is what you want to do? Because half of the time we're like, oh, I really want to do this, but we haven't verbalized it. We haven't gone out and you know, it's like with anything really. Are you really clear on what you want? And are you telling the right people? Like, are you speaking to the right people about it? Sponsorship, another thing I talk about all of the time and about how important and influential it is. But the third thing for me is always persistence. And you literally just nailed the three things that I talk about all of the time with sentences. You're like, I was talking about it for 5 years. Like I was constantly, I was saying it, I was talking about it.
Yes.
And for me, on my first ever expat assignment, luckily, it was really fast, but it was an increased intensity persistence because I knew I was going to the location because Tom had got this job offer. We'd been on holiday to Dubai, And I'd gone into the office, like went and showed my face immediately. I was like, we were on holiday, but I was like, here's an opportunity. I'm just going to be like, here, look at my face. This is my face. Remember me. Like, I'm coming. I need to come here. And I did that. And then, so when Tom got this offer and I knew I was going, I was like straight in contact with the lead in Dubai. And I was like, I need to be here. I need a job. And I emailed him every day because he was like, yeah, okay, it's happening. And then everything just went quiet. And like, we're literally packing up our house. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. So I emailed him every day for 2.5 months. I was that person. And because nothing was happening, I was like, I was just like, and I knew he was so busy. I was like, most of these won't get there. And one, he'll be like, okay. And when I arrived, he was like, oh, I'm so glad you're here, Tara. Not because of anything that you're going to do when you're here, but just because I'm sick of your emails in my inbox. I'm here now, though, but I'm here. And you could, there's no way. I was like, persistence, all the way, persistence.
Totally.
And he'd actually said something to me like, it's not that I encourage you to annoy the hell out of anybody, but he'd said something to me when I was there. He was like, just keep on top of me. Like, this will drift out. You know, he was like, just keep reminding me, keep being there, and it will make it happen. So I took that very literally and emailed somebody every single day for 2.5 months until I got a job. So for sure, making sure what it is that you want, like what it is and where you want to go, actually speaking to people about that. And I think it's, for me, again, I always say this, probably the simplest way to move abroad is to get an international transfer, like work for a global, if you're not in a global company right now, find yourself there, get yourself in there, and then work at being transferred. And there's so many benefits to that in terms of the package that you get and, you know, how you're able to relocate versus just, you know, trying to go somewhere brand new in a company where, you know, you might not get that whole relocation package and all of that stuff. But making sure that you make people really clear on what it is that you want. Make sure you're speaking to the right people and investigating, if not going very, very hard on the sponsorship route, and then being persistent. Because I say this to Tom all the time, because when, you know, like when people don't respond to you, he gets really antsy and he's like, oh, it's just so rude. And, you know, why aren't people responding? And I'm like, your priority is not somebody else's priority.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody has got their own shit going on. Everybody is focused on themselves all of the time. That even if it's the biggest thing for you in the world, it's probably not theirs. It's not their priority. So
but I think also like going back to the persistence thing, the other thing too, and like working for a big global company, if you're already in one, like I can't even tell you how many times people were just like, oh, like, you know, expat roles are really competitive. Like you'll get, like, I got so many times that I spoke to people that they were like doubting what I wanted. And I was just like, okay, fine. I'm going to find someone who then supports me in this. Like because the other part too is that, like, even I was talking to a woman yesterday about this, and she was just like, well, you know, so-and-so thinks that I should be doing this. And it's like, okay, everyone is going to have an opinion about your career, and everyone is going to tell you their opinion about their career. And if also, like, maybe you're talking to a senior leader who didn't do an expat assignment when they were young, or they didn't go abroad at all ever, and they're like going to tell you, oh, you don't need it. It's like, okay, figure out what you want, and then go talk to the person who actually supports you in that. Because, like, I mean, stop wasting time with someone who's going to like doubt you. The same exact thing happened actually for MBA sponsorship in Shell. And it's so funny to me because I like kept telling people over and over and over again, I want an MBA, I want an MBA. It's like, yeah, everyone wants an MBA. We don't sponsor them, blah, blah, blah. No, I figured out a way to do it. And actually, it's funny, when we were in my MBA program, there were 6 Shell people, 3 men, 3 women. All 3 men were sponsored. I was the only female who was sponsored. And now, actually, that I've broken the gate, I'm having like women call me all the time from Shell being like, how did you get sponsored? And I'm just like, because you need to do all of these things, and stop letting people tell you that you don't deserve it, or you don't want it, or it's not worth it. Anyways, I'll get off.
But the key to that, which you just said at the beginning of that, is actually being fully sure in yourself of what you want, and being clear on what you want. And I come across it all of the time, and it absolutely infuriates me. One, you can't expect somebody else to read your mind about what you want if you don't even know what you want to. Like, you absolutely have to know what it is that you want. And you can change your mind. You can change your mind as many times as you like, but get clarity on what it is that you want. Because I've no time for this complaining that you don't have the thing, or that like it's, oh, I'm not, I'm not earning enough money. What is it that you want to earn? Or I don't have the right opportunities. What is the right opportunity for
Yeah.
you? Like, move out of complaining, get absolutely crystal clear on what it is that you want, and go, like you say, go find the right people who are going to listen. And yeah, it might take 1 or 2 or 3 different conversations with different people. But if you really want it, and it's something that, and I say this as well all the time, if it's something that you really, really want, would you not just try anything to get it? Go, put the
Yeah,
work in,
exactly.
clear up what you want, and go get it. Okay, I love that. And actually, it ties nicely in, like you said, you've opened the gate, and like women come to you now to talk to you about how to get those opportunities. And I think you're part of a mentorship scheme or circle you were talking about. So how important has mentorship been for you, and what role do you play as a mentor, as a mentee now?
I mean, so one, I think for me, mentorship actually, like, there was a moment in my career, I think, that because I studied engineering, and most of my engineering class was like close to 50-50 men and women. And so I like had this belief. I was like, oh, it's just a generational thing. Like, people, like, things will start to shift. Like, gender diversity and gender equality will shift in the companies once, all these old white men move out. And then I like got into my career, and I started like just watching women drop out. And I just was like, oh my God. And then I started like just educating myself on like just everything that was basically the pipeline, and the importance of mentorship, but actually the more importance of sponsorship. Like, sponsorship is, and I think you've talked about this probably before, but like, it's the people with influence who are talking about you with your name in their mouth behind closed doors and making decisions for you. Whereas mentorship is just advice. So for me, I like mentorship. For me, women who have mentored me, the advice has been great and amazing, but it's been more like on the educational front, so that I'm actually empowered to go and take control and do things that I can actually move. And so actually, like, I mean, I've had many mentors, but even more so, I've actually had a lot of sponsors in my life and careers. And actually, most of those sponsors have been men. And that's like the sort of drive that I've had between sort of, I think, those two things. But right now, what I'm doing, at least here, is it took me, after being 2 years here, I sort of like was trying to assess the situation of like, what is the problem on diversity thing. I'm the only female on the leadership team here. And so, and we have a lot of women in our organization, but they're lower in the ranks. And so I've stood up actually a mentoring circle mainly on the education front, right? Like, I will obviously be a sponsor for many of these women, but I can't be in every room all the time constantly. And also, I don't think that it's not women's like jobs to be sponsoring all women. I think it's amazing that they do, but like, we need men sponsors sponsoring also women. But so in the mentoring side, it's really around just actually like education and taking control of what's in your power, and then changing or doing things differently in order to achieve objectives. I mean, it's all of the things around, like, I don't know, are you checking your emails to say, oh, I just want to check in, and you're like softening your language? Are you not going for roles because you don't feel you're 100% qualified for them? Are you, I don't know, like sitting at the table? Are you like, constant, like putting yourself back? So it's those types of things, to like actually talk about behavioral things, that when you are operating or you're working in sort of honestly a man's world, what things can you do to actually help yourself propel you, not change you, but like basically make yourself come off more, more powerful, and then own your own career. So anyways, it's a little blabbering, but
No, I love it. And I like the fact of you, like you said, assessing the landscape and seeing what it is that's needed and how it is that you can support. And as a leader, I think that's really important. And you're so right. I talk about mentorship and sponsorship a lot, and how they are very, very, very different things. And the whole leaky pipeline situation, the last 3 episodes of Tara Time have had this discussion in, which is so interesting to me. The
Yeah.
last 3 episodes, it's been a conversation, and my last guest has actually done a whole piece of research about that, and she's really digging into that. But it's really interesting that you said about your engineering classes, the 50-50, but you get into the world and that's so unrepresentative of what it
Totally.
actually looks like when you get in there. And it is
Totally.
because I say they're starting and just going, fuck this, honestly, fuck this. It's too
Yeah.
hard. It's too much of a push constantly. And
Yeah.
I think you're right. That's the thing that has to change. And again, this is something I say so often, but I'm going to keep saying it. Especially in my role as what I do, I'm not ignoring the fact that there is a systematic issue. But for me, the most powerful thing that I can do and that is in my sphere of influence is to
Yeah.
help people individually. Because we do have an individual responsibility, and the things that you just said there are our individual responsibility. We need to stop softening our language. We need to stop saying the just or the should or the I'm
Yes.
sorry if this sound. I'm sorry is the worst one. I'm literally on a mission to have people stop saying sorry when they're not sorry. And all of we do have responsibility to do that, irrespective of what's happened before or what will happen in the future. Like we can do those things that are in our control and aligned with people doing much cleverer and much bigger things than I am on a systematic level, on a group level, on a network level. Like when those two things come together, that's when you start to see the real change. But one thing particularly we spoke about last week, I think it was, very briefly, and I was like, let's go into this on here.
Oh yeah.
Was about taking on more shit. We do have personal responsibility to check in and do the things that we need to do and we've spoken about being visible and putting ourselves in the right rooms and getting the seat at the table. But sometimes we just take on.
Oh no, I think I lost her.
Oh, hello? Are you
Hi,
back?
I'm back.
I
don't know if I can hear you. Argentina internet. So.
Hey, it's usually a lot better than I have found than European internet. So like the internet in Argentina is generally, I don't know who it was, but we're back. So yeah, we often just then take on all of the things.
Yes.
Like we've got to do this and we've got to do that. And what's your experience in that? With that?
Well, no, I mean, I think actually, and thanks for reminding me. I mean, like when we were actually, it was so funny in the first mentoring circle that I kicked off, right? Like we're like talking about topics and what we're going to talk about. And I had someone say to me, like, okay, are we going to stand up a whole program and we'll do all of this work and we'll like educate a bunch of people. And it was immediately going into the like adding more to everyone's plates that were sitting there. And I just was like, no, I do not want this mentoring circle to be an idea brainstorming session on how we're going to do more things in order to fix women. And I was just like, absolutely not. Like this is about education and this is about like us getting to a place where you can decide individually what you're going to do and whether you're going to do things differently. And yeah, I mean, God, it's like, I mean, it's everywhere. It's like, actually, someone the other day, we were in like a big meeting, like a really important meeting with really, really senior people. And I actually, like, I had two members on my team who were there, like, supporting, and we were all taking minutes together because, like, that was like our role, right? It was because, like, I'm leading this project and they were there, like, we're core project team. It's like 3 women engineers. And Courtney, the woman who actually like we were collecting all the notes in order to issue these. And she sends these beautiful meeting minutes, like right at the very end, like, I mean, instantaneously. And so another woman on the team was just like, wow, these are amazing. And she said, I was a production technologist engineer for 5 years in my career of all men, and I've got the note-taking skills to prove it. And I just like, I mean, it was a hilarious thing that she said, but I was like, I hate this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate this so much. And she was just like, absolutely. But like, so, I mean, are you taking minutes constantly? Are you the one planning the birthday party? Are you the one doing the holiday party? Are you like, stop taking it on? And it's like, even when I moved here, actually, I was like so educated about that. but I was taking on standing up our entire extended leadership team. I was accountable for, I actually then got in charge of doing all of the like leadership meetings, like running those. And I was so frustrated because I just like kept trying to be like, this is someone else's. And actually my boss at the time was just like, no, like, but you're so good at it. I'm like, no, you're paying too much to do this shit for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good one. Like, I have used that phrase before. Like, I am too expensive for this task that you're trying to give me to do. Like, you do not want me to be to pay me to do this. And the minutes thing, I had a really interesting conversation with a client, which was like the opposite of this situation, which I loved. So, and with all of the negative shit that happens, and I like to share the good shit that's happening too. So she said she went into a meeting and she was like, this meeting was way above my pay grade. I'd been invited into a room that I'm never usually invited into. So her first thing was this, and she was like, she looked around the room, there was no other women in the room. And she was like, they fucking want somebody to take the minutes here. I know what is going on. Like, I know this has happened to me so many times before in my career. That's why I've been called. They were like, Donna, would you mind joining this meeting? Anyway, it had like the top leader of the program in the meeting. And she said, I got in there and she was like, automatically, I started writing minutes because I just assumed that's what they wanted. So she's like, I just started writing the minutes. She's like, we got to the end of the meeting and the leader of the meeting, again, the leader of the whole program said, okay, fantastic. I'm going to make sure I issue these minutes by tomorrow. Thanks everybody for being here. And Donna, thanks for your input. And she was like, what? Nobody wants me to write the minutes. He's gonna write the minutes. Nobody even wanted me to write the minutes. And I've been sat here this whole time because that's what I thought I'd been invited for. And I hadn't. Like, they just wanted my input. They asked for my input on a specific thing. And rightly so. Like, the guy who led the meeting said, I'm gonna share these at the end. And she was like, oh great.
Great.
Automatically assumed, because of experience and because of what had happened before.
Yeah. I think I don't know if it's me or you, Tara.
What is going on for us today? We're back. Anyway, we're back.
I don't know if it's me or you.
I have no idea. I don't know. We'll keep going. We keep plowing on. So yeah, I think there's a key thing is don't assume, even if you think, because of all of the experiences you've had today, don't make that assumption. You may well be being invited into the room because, you've got a valued, thing, but we get so stuck because we've done things, and we've been conditioned. We've had these things happen to us over and over again that we're like, oh, they just want me in here for the minutes. But I love that. I love that.
I really also love flipping the switch also on just like gender norms. It's so funny because like my team is like 50-50 men and women. And I have six staff that are based here in Argentina. And actually in the office, when you come up the stairs, like my team is like the first thing that you see when you enter the door. And so there's like these doors that open and like my team is there. And because I had 50-50 men and women, I immediately put like the tallest man on my team, like right at the front of the door. And honestly, the first time it happened, it was so funny to me because people will walk in and they'll look at him and they'll be like, where do I go? And they just like, they start wandering around, right? Like they're just like, oh my God, where do I go? And it's so funny because if I had put one of my female engineers right there, they would have been admin of the whole floor. Where does this person sit? Where do I go to see this person? Like, and they would have immediately been answering those questions. But because I just like put a tall man there, like people don't know. Like, it's so funny to watch. I watch it all the time because I just like people can't reconcile with that. And it's great because he also doesn't respond to anyone. He'll like see people be like, hey, and then he just doesn't like acknowledge. He just keeps working, and the people find their way. So it's like,
oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. It's also, like you say, just an interesting thing to watch and see how people behave. Yeah. Correct. Oh my God, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your career.
Sure.
Talk us through So from university to where you are now, talk a bit about your career path because it is very interesting to me.
Okay. No, I studied civil engineering. So growing up, I like love buildings and I love like the built world. And so I actually thought I was going to be an architect because it's like very artsy and then found that I was like very good at math and science. So I was like, okay, actually, why don't I do like civil structural engineering? Because it's like the math and science behind all of these buildings. And so I studied civil structural engineering. I got my undergrad degree and then I did an immediate master's because really to study or to practice structural engineering, you really need a master's. And it's funny because actually, like in undergrad, I was in South Carolina and I was like hell bent on getting to California. I was like, I'm going to go to the West Coast, like complete opposite of where I was. And I had a professor who had actually studied at Georgia Tech, which is like where I did my master's degree, and it's in Atlanta. And he was like, you should just really look at Georgia Tech because it's a really good school, and it is a good school. And so I went down there, and I was like, oh, this is like in the city, and it's lovely. Anyways, long story short, they gave me a scholarship that I didn't have to actually do like a thesis, and so it was going to be very quick. I was like, great, I'll go to Georgia Tech, I'll do a 1-year assignment, and then I'll move to California. And that was in 2009, and the entire economy collapsed. And I also met Kurt at the time, and then Kurt had gotten a job in Houston. And it's so funny because I was always one of those people, like, I'm not moving for a man, but I could tell that something was like really special with Kurt. And I was just like, and now it's obviously my husband. So, but I was just like, oh my God, I'm like blowing up my life. I was supposed to go to California. He's moved to Texas. What is happening? I also can't get in. I applied to 65 structural engineering companies in 2009 and either was just ghosted or rejected from all 65. And I was just like,
Holy shit. You haven't shared that with me, but that is so, that, I mean, it's a lot.
it was awful. It was a rough point. And actually, then I spoke to a professor and he was just like, you should really go and look at energy or oil and gas companies. And I was just like, oh, like, I really don't want to do that. And it's so funny though. So I was just like, okay, fine. But I was like desperate, right? 65 companies. I needed a job. Like, how do I? And so I ended up getting a role. Actually, my roommate from undergrad had worked for a company, like a project management company, and they had a sister company. Actually, it's UK based. It was Atkins at the time. They had a one office shop in Houston. And so I got connected and I ended up going in and working at Atkins. It's actually really funny. I actually interviewed also for another company in Houston. I don't know if I've ever told you this, that literally the company was in this person's house. Like I arrived. Yeah, I arrived and they literally walked me into the living room, and then the conference room was in a bedroom, and it was like this like I was just like, what am I doing? I'm not working for this company that is run out of someone's home that they haven't even renovated into an office. Like, this is insane. Anyways, so I ended up working for Atkins. I worked for them for like 3.5 years. And that's when I actually just like discovered like how basically energy touches like every single human. It touches everyone on this planet. I think that there's so much complexity on energy security and quality of life and like basically how the whole world operates, that I just found so much purpose in doing basically working in the energy sector, and also really trying to change it from an oil and gas world that we live in into into more sustainable and renewable energy sources. And so I was just like, this is way cooler than building buildings and having to answer to an architect. So I worked there for 3.5 years. I worked offshore for a good bit of that, like working in the field. And then I moved to Shell in 2013 in their deepwater projects organization. And so we were building basically offshore oil and gas platforms. And so that was like huge, heavy construction. Half of it was being built in South Korea. A lot of it was being built on the Gulf Coast. I was managing, I started actually just as a project manager, and then I quickly moved actually into leadership positions. So I was managing then a team of like design engineers. And then I moved into a team that was actually doing all of the construction management and all of the building of these platforms half of my team was in South Korea, half of them were in Louisiana. And then at the end of that stint, I was also like doing a big project management role. I was managing like over $100 million of scope and 24-hour vessel construction operations with subsea robotic stuff, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But in Shell, there's sort of an organization that does project delivery on behalf of Shell. And they sort of give you money and they say like, go and deliver this. And I just didn't know how we were actually making money as a company. And so I actually then tried to pivot myself from there to actually a more business focused role. And so I ended up applying for, we have something called like business advisors. It's basically chief of staff to senior leaders. I applied for 3 of them. I got rejected from 2 of them, and I was just like, let's keep going. But I got on radar screen.
Persistence
again. And I ended up then landing a role where I was supporting, well, actually a senior leader, an EVP of basically our onshore business had hired me. And then the next Monday, a press release came out saying that he was leaving and retiring and that this new woman would be coming in and she was going to basically take his job. Plus she was going to be president of Shell US. And I was like, this is crazy. Oh my gosh. And it's funny, I immediately went into my head, like, I don't deserve this. She's going to get rid of me. All of the doubt that came in. But then I worked for her for 2.5 years. And then, and then from there, I moved into this business role. I also got an MBA through all of that. Sometimes I'm crazy on the things that I've added to my plate, but yeah. So then after the graduating MBA, after finishing that assignment, moved down here, and it's been a wild ride. It's been really fun.
I, again, love that I've just found out another something new that we have in common too. So I actually studied architecture for a year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So my career, this just is a really nice point about perception, about what we think we're going to do in our lives, about what we think we enjoy, about how little we know about what is out there. And this is a thing that I have serious beef with in terms of career education. This is for everybody. It's not just for women, but just general career education of what is like when we're at school, because, and specifically for me, coming from a really small town where it's like my careers advice was like, you could be a nurse, or you could be a professor, or you could be a builder, or you could be, and I was like, what? Oh, that's it. That's the options. So that's what I know about. So, and so again, I love buildings. I mean, I'm obsessed with buildings. This is the one reason that Tom always says he has to be on dog shit watch all of the time to make sure I'm not stepping in poo, because I'm always like this. Around me, just looking at a building. He's like, where are you looking? Why are you not looking at the floor? Because I'm looking at the building. I'm looking at the buildings. Also, if I see an abandoned building, it genuinely makes me feel sad, because I'm like, it's not fulfilling its purpose as a building. It doesn't get to fulfill its purpose as a building. So also obsessed with buildings. And so after I wanted to be a doctor originally, and I've told this story a couple of times, especially when I had my mum on for the first episode. I wanted to be a doctor. I did all of the qualifications to go to med school. I did biology, chemistry, psychology, sociology. I was going to med school, and she really never wanted me to do it because she was working in the national health system at the time, and she was like, it's a miserable place to be. Please don't be there. And a whole thing happened, and eventually we agreed I wasn't going and she wasn't going to go work back there. And so I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? And I was still at school studying I need to change my qualifications to go to university. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to be an architect. I don't even know how it came about. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm a bit creative. I could draw something, whatever, we'll do that. We'll go and do architecture because I love buildings. Honestly, I did a year and I fucking hated it because it was so fluffy for me. The first year of it was so fluffy and so conceptual and all of that. And I was like, oh no, this is not me. I clearly knew so little about myself. And I think at the time that we go to university, we often don't know much about ourselves or what we're good at or what we enjoy or anything. So it's really hard because then we've got this qualification that maybe doesn't match. But for me, I don't believe if you start something, don't just finish it because you started it if you hate every second of it. I'm also, don't just quit something because it's hard. But if it's not aligned and you don't love it, go change your mind. Like there's
Totally.
no such thing as wasting time. You're going to waste more time doing something that you hate for a very long time. So a year came in and I went to my tutor at university and I was like, I can't do this. I hate it. He was like, yeah, I know you hate it. He was like, you're actually really good at it. And I aced all my grades, whatever. He was like, I can
Yeah.
see that you absolutely despise it. He was like, you should go be a project manager. He was like, from what I see of how you behave, he was like, I had never even heard about project management. So I didn't
Yeah.
even know the phrase. At this point, I'm a year into my university career. I've never even heard of this. I was like, what is that? He was like, you can just organize shit and tell people what to do. He was like, it's really your bag. I was like, oh yeah, that is. And it's a great description of what a project manager is.
Totally.
But I think not being afraid to, it's a bit, contradictory of what we've said already, but also not being afraid of listening to what other people can see in you or what they think you might be good at, because you might be completely blind to things that exist or where your strengths and skills are. And so I listened to this guy and I just went and applied for project management. I shifted and went and did project management instead.
Yeah.
And it was so much of a better fit. It was so much better. So if you're starting something, don't be afraid just to go, this isn't the right thing for me. And also like open your mind up to different things. Like you said, you were like, ugh, energy. No, I don't want to do that. And now like the things that you learn, there's also this, you don't know what you don't know. Like until you start scratching into stuff and figuring out like the different parts of things. And I'm sure when you have conversations with people about what you do, there is a surface level judgment about the work that you do. 100%. But once you're in that, and I find that there's that with any field, like as an outsider, you've no idea about the work you do or the reason you do it, or, all of that kind of stuff. Actually, that's interesting. Have you ever dealt with that, like other people's judgments, opinions about what you do?
Oh, all the time. I mean, like when I go home and see my family, right? Like they live in this retirement community filled with like national park naturalists. And so they're always just like, you work for Shell? And yeah, I mean, it's just like, and the thing is that I find that like you have to engage in those beliefs. And I also think that it's like just being human honestly can open up a lot of doors and actually talking about like what you're doing. It's funny actually, because like probably the most common question I get is like, are your parents okay with what you're doing? And actually I've asked my parents that. I'm like, are you guys okay with what I'm doing? And they're like, yeah, like we totally, we get that this is an energy system that is so complicated. And there isn't one fit solution, because if there was, it would happen already, right? In order to actually fix this. And so it's funny actually, because I would much rather be working I'm actually really happy that I work for a European company, because they are so much more forward thinking in this space than the US companies are. And yeah, anyways, but I think it goes back to like the purpose. Like if I felt that every single day what I was doing was misaligned with my values, I absolutely would be like, absolutely not, I'm out, and I would be doing something else. And it's actually, I've dabbled in that, right? Like I've looked at like, I don't know, going and working in hydrogen startups, like green hydrogen startups, and doing something completely different. But I think that there's an element, particularly right now, like learning for me right now how to operate in a completely different culture with a really complex government, and also providing energy security to a country that is has a huge debt problem, right? Like there's so much here that I'm learning, and skill wise, that I'm like, man, like every day. Did you know, like this week I found out that like money market accounts in Argentina deliver 60% return on investments. Like a money market account here. I was just like, what? Like 60%? Like that's insane. Now inflation is like 90%, so you're still losing money. But I just was like, oh, anyways. So anyways, it's just like I'm in a spot where I find, I don't know, I'm like learning every single day, and I'm like building new skills, and that's what's important to me in this part of my life right now. So
and you said as well, I'd rather be working from the inside, making changes, doing things. And this came up with one of my clients recently, and it makes me feel, I don't know, it makes me feel a bit emotional about the work that I do and how we get to decisions that we make and all of that kind of stuff. And it was about a move to Saudi. And this woman, she has been heading up diversity and inclusion networks in the company for years. Like, it's so important to her, you know, and she's been working specifically in gender diversity and all of that good stuff. Like, that's her purpose. That's what she spends a lot of her time doing. And she was like, I can't go to Saudi. She was like, she had like 5 different international locations pitched to her to choose from. And she was like, one of them was Saudi. She was like, well, if that's easy, I've now only got 4. There's no chance I'm going to Saudi. Like, it doesn't align with my values. That was the immediate discussion. And we obviously got into a coaching conversation. And within 2 weeks, it was, oh my God, I've got to go to Saudi. Saudi is now the number 1 preference on the list. And there was a couple of things that were important to her. One, and it was that, if I don't go, how can I create change?
Yeah, exactly.
If I don't go, how can I create any change? If I go, I can actually have an impact on something. But the other thing was, again, going to perception. So one of the reasons she works internationally is that she literally supports her family to come travel to the places that she is. And that is one of the most important parts of why she works internationally. So she was like, my family who are in Tanzania, she was like, this is a huge consultation process of where I'm going to move next, because it has to be somewhere that they want to travel. And I think one of the options was Canada. Another was, I think, maybe somewhere in Europe, maybe Holland or something like that. And then the third was, again, there was Saudi on the table. And she was like, there's no way they're going to want to go there. So I'm definitely like, that's a real huge thing. I was like, have you asked them? And she was like, no, I've just made an assumption. She went and asked them. They did a vote. They did a poll inside their family WhatsApp group. And where won? Saudi. So again, complete perception situation. They were all like, no, we don't want to go Canada. Canada is of no interest to us. Like, we don't want you to go there. None of us have been to Saudi. Like, so she was like, what? Yeah. And it just goes to show, like, we make these assumptions all of the time. We have these perceptions of what we think we're going to do or what we think is the right thing to do. But if we can just dig a little bit deeper and scratch under the surface of what is the impact I can make? Am I making assumptions on other people's behalves without even, thinking about it?
Totally.
So, I think it's a really important thing to think about is, are we making decisions based on like immediate judgments or perceptions, or are we opening our mind, learning about something that we maybe didn't know and trying something new? Because that's where the magic happens, I think.
Totally.
Okay. Couple of things as we close. I want to ask you a couple of questions. What's your favorite thing about living? Easy questions. What's your favorite thing about living in Argentina?
Oh, traveling to the like Patagonia and the country areas of Argentina, like just seeing this incredible country. The locations are spectacular. So you're in one now. You're in Salta. It's like
the landscapes in this region are unrivaled, I think.
Correct. 100%.
You asked me just before we came on, what's the plan? What's the plan for the rest of the day? And Tom and I, in the last 2 weeks, the last 14 days, we spent 10 of those driving around Argentina. I was like, I'm going to do some work because I've just been driving around places with no Wi-Fi, lapping up the lovely countryside and lovely landscapes and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Yes. If you could give one piece of advice about getting into an international leadership career or position, what would it be?
I mean, I think it would go back to what we were saying before. Like, figure out what you want and tell every single person in your life that you want that.
I love that.
Every person.
Every person. Yeah.
Correct.
Every person, including yourself regularly.
Correct.
Like just reminding yourself, and this can, can bleed into things like, I like visualization activities, journaling, writing things down. Actually, I do this whole like future self exercise where I write something from me. I'm like, when you've got all of the things, because it makes it so clear to you. And it's like, you can, your brain operates in a place where you have that and you start to take the actions aligned with having that. If you can really taste it and, feel it and smell it and touch it and all of those, you can engage your senses in that. So there's like a whole, like, are you telling yourself that to the next degree as
Yes.
well? Okay.
Totally.
And the last question I'm going to ask you, people always ask me how they can prepare for these sessions, and I never give people questions because I really like to ask people questions on the spot and they hate it. So I'm also just coming up with these on the spot myself. What advice would you give to people making friends in a new country?
Join the WhatsApp group. Go to the thing.
Just go to the thing. Go put your big girl pants on and go to the thing.
Correct. Go to the thing. No, and I actually, like, as you were just talking about, like, because I think it goes back to also the first question around like figuring out what you want and telling everyone. The moments that I look back, it's funny because like the moments that are the hardest, if you're like scared shitless about something because you're like, I have no idea what this is gonna be, like I feel that you always come out better at the end of it because you look back and you either have a great story because it was a complete shit experience, or you have this experience where you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe that I did that, or I can't believe that I met that person. And so, yeah, I'm glad that Tom was like, don't turn around, Tara. You can walk 40 minutes home, or you can come and show up.
Yeah. You're right. The scariest things. The scariest
Correct.
things always have the best outcome. And
Totally.
it's that kind of, the cliche thing about failure as well. But it's not cliche because it's so fucking true. If you do the thing and it doesn't work out, you're going to have learned something either about you, about the situation, about, way more than if you just don't do the thing.
Totally.
Okay, then the last thing based on that, what is the scariest, where you followed your own advice there? What's the scariest thing that you've just gone, yeah, I'm just going to do this? It's real scary.
Oh, that's a good question. I think actually moving here was probably one of the most scary because I had all sorts of internal mind talk around the language piece of it. For some reason, for me, it was just like, oh my God, like I can't move somewhere and I'm not going to learn the language. And I remember actually, because I was working with a coach at the time, he kept being like, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? And I'm just like, well, I like won't be able to speak it and I won't. He's just like, Kate, you're going to also learn a language. Just relax. I mean, I think it's part of the fact that like it took me forever to learn the English language because I'm a math and science brain. So like I have all this baggage of like learning English. So I had a really big hiccup on like living in a place where I cannot communicate perfectly.
Your Spanish is excellent. It's so good.
It's a roller coaster, but the thing is like that actually like jumping in, moving here, and just be like, I'm gonna speak. And sometimes people will be like, I don't understand anything that you're saying. Like the other day, I was like talking to someone. He could tell that I had a foreign accent, and he was just like, I could tell he was just like, I know nothing that you're saying. I'm like, yeah, well, we tried. Like,
Do you operate so business wise? Because I've worked expat roles, but I've been lucky enough that even doesn't matter the country I've worked in, it's been working in English. So either I've translated. Do you operate in Spanish at work every day?
No, I mean, in general, most of my operations are in English. Half of my team is in North America, and half of them are here. But like, if I'm in a leadership meeting, if I'm the only non-Spanish speaker, like native Spanish speaker, though, in a meeting, and I'm not leading the meeting, I will just say like, let's speak in Spanish because I have to like just rip this Band-Aid off. So more and more my meetings are in Spanish, but that was the point. And I still am scared so much on this. Like, I don't know. Like yesterday I had to give part of a town hall in Spanish. Just like, oh, like this is so scary to me. But I've also found that it's like, okay, well, if you just try though, if you like make an effort, people actually respect that. And actually one of the biggest things that Kurt told me when we moved here was just like, you've dealt with so many people who are not native English speakers in the United States. Do you judge them? And I was like, no, never. And he was like, no one's judging you, Kate.
that reflection, that thing is something that I use all of the time in a coaching perspective, but like it applies to everything. And
Yes.
there's sometimes though the answer does surprise, like sometimes people go, oh yeah, maybe I do judge that a little bit. And
Oh,
then it's
yeah.
like, well, that's why you're judging
Yeah.
yourself. Because when you judge other people, you then
Yes.
judge yourself on the same types of things. So irrespective, if the answer is no, I don't judge people, great, we'll go do it. If the answer is yeah, I do sometimes, okay, it's time for a little bit of
So
introspection. Yeah, let's think
Yeah.
about why you're judging, because that's the reason you're judging yourself. And it's probably just you and not everybody else.
Totally.
So yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. Well, we have hit an hour. We are bang on time. Thank you so much. See, you had nothing to be nervous about. You were
We didn't
absolutely.
talk about dogs at all.
We haven't talked, but actually, let's take 2 minutes to talk about dogs, because we both. You're right. We definitely should talk about dogs. We both have brought our dogs internationally. Very, very important. And
Yeah.
I feel like people think like it's the thing like, oh my God, it's so hard. Like it's a blocker. I can't move abroad because I've got an animal and I can't do it, which
Yes.
you totally can. You
Yes.
absolutely can. And it was non-negotiable for us to go anywhere with a dog. I don't know, when you moved, like how did you find it? How did you find taking the dogs? And was it just like, it's just happening? There's no, it's non-negotiable.
Yeah, I mean, we had 2 dogs at the time when we decided we were moving here, and both of them were elderly. So one was like 12 at the time, the other one was 15 actually. The 15 one, actually, it's so funny. She was like, we rescued her from actually a family who was originally Argentine, and she unfortunately passed, but I think she was just like, I'm not moving to Argentina with you guys. You guys go have fun. I'm not going. And actually, it was a blessing in disguise that it took so long to move here during the pandemic, because we didn't put her through that. No, but then with Sadie, I was just like, yeah, she's coming. She's coming to Argentina, and it was a headache. I mean, you have to navigate all of these things. There's services, there's all sorts of stuff. But like, if you just do your research, I was like, oh, this isn't actually that difficult. Actually, the worst part was that we moved in the pandemic, and then we had to clear her through aduanas, which is customs here. And that took 6 hours. And I was just like, give me my dog.
Yeah.
So, but she's having a lovely retirement here.
When we got here, it was the first. So Sasha's been to, I don't know how many countries now, more countries that I think than the average adult has traveled to. So she's traveled to more places than most of my family. But when she came here, it was the first time that they'd ever put the crate on the conveyor belt. So she came out like, and it was the funniest thing to me. Like, I absolutely wet my pants seeing it. Because usually she comes out as, oversized baggage, which is what she is. She's oversized baggage. But like, I don't know. I can't be without dog. It is something that we bonded over as well, for sure.
Totally.
Like, and I think that when Tom said you can leave, you don't have to come to the occasion, but you can have to walk 40 minutes. I think the other thing he probably said was, there's a dog there, you'll be able to stroke the dog. Like I'm a child. And I'm like, oh, dog, yeah, dog.
Yeah, okay, I'll come see Sadie.
And we also we're at this point now where we like rate the level of stray dogs in places. Like every place we go, like, is there a good level of stray dog? Like, how many dogs have you stroked today? How many dog videos go in our group, our multiple group chats, let's say, every day? Like, how many dog videos?
Yes. No, it's so funny actually. Like, and we were in Calafate or El Chaten 2 weeks ago, and God, there were so many dogs that we were petting. I don't know if they were stray or not, but I was just like, I want this one. This is Argentina is such a dog friendly place. It's lovely.
Yeah, I think South America in general is excellent. If you like to stroke a stray dog, excellent place for stray dogs. Yesterday, I chopped up half of my steak and took it out to the dogs that were sat outside. I'm kind of taking it to the next level now of feeding them all as well. Well, it has been absolutely wonderful to have you on here, and I will see you in a week. I will actually see you in the flesh in a week.
I love it. Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, see you later. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, remember to hit like, subscribe to my channel so you never miss an episode, and leave a comment below. If you enjoyed this episode, remember